Welcome to Real Conversations with Patricia Baranovsky-Schneider, the podcast that takes you on a journey around the world to meet some of the most inspiring and accomplished individuals. Discover their stories, uncover invaluable business lessons from their paths to success, and gain exclusive insights on how to apply their strategies to elevate your life.
Hello, and welcome to Real Conversations with Patricia. I'm your host, Patty Baranovsky-Schneider. Today, I'm joined by Diane Taylor, the founder and principal consultant of Glow Leadership. So welcome, Diane. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here with you and your listeners. I am a strategic leadership coach. I help senior leaders build winning teams. And so I'm a leadership coach, advisor, and in last October, I became a bestselling author as well.
Very nice. Very nice. So now what inspired you to start Glow Leadership? And how do you help individuals and organizations discover and ignite their highest potential?
Yeah. So before starting Glow Leadership 12 years ago now, I worked in corporate HR for 20 years. And there was different things that I did in my HR career. Some of them I loved, some of them not so much. So I decided I moved on as a result of a position elimination after eliminating many jobs within Canada's largest retailer at the time, back in 2012. My turn came. So I took the opportunity to start my own company at that time and really focus on the things that I love. And that is more on the strategy, the people strategy, and then the leadership coaching.
Nice. Yeah, I know the whole HR, it's like changed dramatically. People were saying now, like before, like when you put a resume, before it even gets to HR, it's all, dissected by AI and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's just insane. So I can imagine how navigating in that space can be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now how do you define conscious leadership, and what are the key traits of a conscious leader in today's world?
Yeah. So conscious leadership is they say that only 30% of people right now are conscious. And how we simply define consciousness is when you believe life is happening for you rather than to you, you have stepped into a conscious state. You understand that life is hard, and that's just a part of the life experience. And with each challenge we're thrown, that is an opportunity to grow and learn. So when a leader reaches that space of consciousness, they can really go from being a mediocre leader to a great leader. And I really discovered this through my experience of being at the table when it came time for promotions. People can think, oh, it's the glass ceiling, or it's the economy, or it's, I'm not working hard enough, or I need to, leave my kids at daycare 3 hours longer and show them and prove to them that I really deserve this promotion. That's what a lot of people think that is holding them back from promotions. However, what really is holding them back is those unconscious behaviors that we show up with that create a lack of buy-in, a lack of our ability to influence others. So as humans, as we grow and we elevate in consciousness, we create more power. We come back into a state of taking our own power back, and we have the ability to influence others in a positive, peaceful, balanced way. And that really helps us grow and create success naturally instead of the forcing. So, yeah.
Maintaining balance, it's a struggle for a lot of people. So what strategies do you recommend for achieving true work-life harmony?
Yeah. So first of all, I don't use the model of work-life balance, because when we say work-life, we're putting two parts of our life in competing fashion. So what happens, it's like, let's say that the New York Islanders are playing the Vancouver Canucks. One of them has to lose, right? Unfortunately. So when you put two things polar opposite each other, one of them usually loses. So the first thing is the model that we're using is not effective. So I transitioned that to something called the relationship balance model. and we put ourselves at the center of that. And we have a relationship with our work, our family, our spouse, each one of our children individually, our community, our friends. We have different relationships in our lives, and each one of them needs to be nurtured. And the most important one is our relationship with ourselves, that sort of foundational piece. So, and in my book, I walk people through, because this is something that unfortunately I learned the hard way. Patty, I, climbed the corporate ladder through force and working hard and getting stuff done. And, by the time I, laid off thousands of people, I was feeling pretty beat up and burnt out. And so I've learned how to do things differently. So in my book, I teach that, because I wish someone had taught me how to do that. So it goes step by step. But it's really in the balance is where we find the success, as opposed to when we put work and balance across from each other. It's almost like, well, if I have balance, I can't be successful. But when we create balance, success follows.
Well, it makes total sense, because I was in that same boat too. I was, out of high school, putting myself through college. I was a single mom of two, and being in a company in marketing is, back then, was a male-dominated industry.
Yeah.
So the company I was with had a lot of women in it, which I admired, but we had to work 10 times harder to prove ourselves. And now, top that off, I'm in a company of women. Nobody had kids but me. So no one understood what I was dealing with, what I had to go through. And, I was doing the same. Like my kids had to be picked up by daycare by 6. I would leave work, run, pick them up, bring them back to the office, stay there till 11. I just busted my butt trying to prove myself.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I was just somebody doing everybody else's work. And, it was draining, emotional and physical and mental. And, but, at that day, we didn't have mentors back then. It was kind of like, you just suck it up and deal with it, So
Exactly.
I like that you're helping people now, because, same like you, wish I had somebody telling me otherwise back then,
Right, exactly. And I'm like you, I'm single mom, 2 kids, and yeah.
Not easy.
Don't do what we did. Don't do it the hard way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, you emphasize creating meaningful success. So how can people align their personal and professional goals to achieve that?
Well, that is one of the things that I like to do with my leadership students, is say to them, I want you to do an exercise, get a piece of paper and a pen, write your eulogy. How do you want to be remembered? What do you want your legacy to be? Now, is your time aligned with your priorities? Because a lot of people, if we were really to say the truth and go to their, celebration of life and read their eulogy, it will say, Patty and Diane killed themselves in the corporate world,
Exactly.
And worked more hours than anybody to prove them. We don't want it to be read like that. We want it to be said that, we were wonderful mothers, that we helped, we're loyal, forever friends, that, our partners adored us, and that we really left something meaningful. So once we understand what our priorities are, and then we moved more towards aligning our time and back to that relationship balance, like what relationships am I spending time? And then I really like to schedule everything. We do a really good job scheduling our work, but what happens, for example, in a lot of marriages is you get to that wedding day, and that wedding day is everything, and it's a big celebration. And then you think that's the finish line. Well, that's not the truth. That's the starting line. And if we don't, schedule a date night or, schedule time together, marriage turns into communicating about logistics and dividing to conquer with the kids, and the partnership relationship is lost. So that's where I speak about being intentional. What we water grows.
Yeah, and you hear that a lot too, where so many couples, as they're, once they have the kids and it's no longer just you and your husband. Now it's you, your husband, the kids, who's doing this, who's doing that, who's cooking, who's taking them, and they lose sight of one another. And I knew somebody else who they were scheduling, or I guess they were going to therapy at this point, and the therapist had suggested scheduling a date night, and they were devastated, like, oh, I had to pencil in. How else are you going to do it? I mean, life just gets away from you. So I think it's a great thing to do. Just schedule it in and make time. So now this is blocked out, just me and you today. For the next 5 hours, it's just us, Yeah.
It's interesting how people say, oh, I can't believe that, that's so not romantic or that's so forced, but that's how we run the most significant part of our lives, our work lives, where we spend the most part of our, and it works. Yeah. So use the structure and then use your romance on the date.
If you're going to a 9:00 movie, you scheduled for that. You'd make sure you ate before you went, whatever the case, so the same. I mean, and I would be looking forward to that, saying, oh, the next 4 hours is just us, I mean, I would look forward to that.
Exactly. And that anticipation, they say that if you have a vacation scheduled, the anticipation of waiting for your vacation is just as, it gives back to us just as more. Right. So same with date night, right? It can become something good.
Yeah, I agree. Now tell us, your personal journey taught you to take back your power. So how can others identify and overcome obstacles holding them back?
It really comes down to self-awareness. It really, what is really, no one is taking our power away. Right. We are giving our power away. We give our power away to the government, to, I'm not saying, don't follow the rules, but, whatever they say, we trust and we believe in, the healthcare profession and big pharma. Like, these companies are making a lot of money on us trusting them. But we need to be at the table as a piece of that. So when we're sitting, for example, at the doctor's, that's one person's opinion. You know your body better than anyone else, and maybe you want a second opinion, or maybe you also want to bring a naturopath forward to your table. But you're the CEO of the table. Your doctor is your advisor. Your naturopath is an advisor. So first of all, be the CEO of your life, every area of your life. So, and then understanding, doing the work. And people are like, oh, I don't have time to do the work. But we really do. We're just avoiding it because we don't really know how to do the work or what to do. And, in my book, I make it really easy. I walk people through some exercises. I have a needs analysis, for example. We talk a lot about, in the last decade, there's been a lot about what are our desires? And that's fabulous. But our needs are more important than our desires. And we don't even know what those are. And if we don't know what they are, we can't communicate them. And so what happens is we push down our knees, and then we can't stand it anymore. And we're like, that never goes over well.
Well, it's funny when you say when people don't have time, because I hear that all the time. Like, even with people saying, just take 5 minutes, like, I know some people who are like total Debbie Downers, and it's like, you could just stare out the window and just take 5 minutes to just say, oh, look at the sun glaring off the snow, something. And people will say they don't have time, but it's like, you could sit here and start binge watching something on Netflix, or like, my husband, he'll kill me for this, but he's famous for this. I'm going to bed, but then he'll just see something on YouTube. And then that became the next one. The next thing, it's 2.5 hours later, and he's still binge watching. You can find the time. It's just what you put as your priority, and that's what people have to say. Okay, you come first. Yeah.
Right. And we spend hours and hours doom scrolling, and most people, a lot of people I work with, they'll say, I can't go to sleep. I put my head on the pillow and I, think about things. Well, either you can journal dump those thoughts out before you go to bed, or you can shift from those thoughts to a gratitude practice. Like, what am I grateful for today? Because whatever you think of right before you go to sleep is what you're going to marinate in for the next 8 hours. So you can make it negative or you can make it positive. So you have the choice. Again, no one is there at bedtime taking your power away but you.
I agree 100%. So now many professionals feel stuck in their careers. So what are the common reasons people aren't getting promoted, and how can they change that?
Well, I think the most common reason, like I said, is that they're not able to influence because they may not be respected, or they're not building a team. They're not focused on, the important things. Typically, there's a lack of awareness of why we're not respected, or why we're not able to get the buy-in from other people. And that's, it's my philosophy that in our formative years, we're born into this life and we're perfect human beings. And then stuff happens to us, and that has an impact on us. Sometimes we don't remember what that is. Sometimes we do. Some people go, well, I had a pretty good life, but there was something, someone said something to you the wrong way, or someone hurt you, something hurt you. And we put that into our subconscious mind, which controls 95% of the way we show up. And then that affects us. If we don't go back and do the work and heal that, bring that into the conscious to let it go, so that we can, ascend in consciousness. That's the stuff that holds us back. We all have worked with people where like, I don't want to report to them, or they're this or they're that. In my book, I talk about behaviors of conscious leadership, how conscious leaders show up. And then the other chapter is unconscious leadership, common things that unconscious leaders show up, their behaviors. They're a martyr, or they don't want to develop. They hold tightly on, no, I can't, they don't delegate, only I can do it. Right. And they think, oh, if I am the most valuable person, I'll get promoted. Well, no, it's not like that. It's, how are you lifting others up? How are you being a team player? How are you, the other thing that a lot of people do is they think, well, if I work harder and show people how busy and stressed out I am, and if I come to the work with the bun on top of the head and I look haggard, they'll know I'm so worthy and of a promotion. No, it's the person that has the ease that we know can take on more.
Right.
So,
yeah. It's funny when you say about people not wanting to, share, because it's kind of funny. Like I do IRP in marketing, and I've always been on the agency side. So I can do it all, or I get happy to work with people, whether it's internal, external. I've been doing this 35 years. My overall goal is the client success, not me. And I found that through my years, people, so say we're working for a company and they have an internal or external IRP or marketing. We're each hired for one specific thing. We all work together. But then I get people who are like, I'm not going to tell them what I'm doing because they're going to steal the work. Now you got three different departments pitching three different stories. And I'm like, what sense does this make? It's not about me. It's about the, but people, everybody, if you have that much fear that someone's going to take your work, then improve what you're doing so that doesn't happen. It's like, I don't know what else to say. But people, they're territorial.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I worked for another company back in the day, right out of high school. And that was an old school company where they felt if you weren't working 18-hour days, you were a slacker. You might not have had enough work but there were people who would stay there all day till like 8, 9 o'clock playing solitaire. But it's like, if you weren't at your desk, you were looked on as a slacker. And that's sad. I'm glad we're evolving off that.
Yes, it is very sad because we're not built for that. Even, the way we've changed training and the way I've developed my leadership development programs is all around the way adults learn. There's a 3-hour learning saturation point, and when you're online, it's like 45 minutes. So I drip the content over time, but it's shorter. It's more digestible bites that then layer on top of each other to create an outcome, as opposed to, not that long ago, I was bringing people into the classroom for 8 hours and, trying my hardest to keep their energy up at 1 o'clock after lunch.
For a nap. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Now, you've turned personal tragedy into triumph. So what advice do you have for people navigating unprocessed emotions in difficult circumstances?
Yeah. So my biggest advice for people that, are navigating through something is to navigate through it. Do not soldier on. So a lot, when it was just 2 months before my 4th birthday, shortly after my sister's 5-year birthday, that she passed away from cancer. And Yes, thank you. Back in that day, there was no, I was just deemed as a child that didn't know what was going on. And it wasn't until I was, then I had some strange kind of illness they couldn't figure out in grade 5. And, at this point, we didn't really link that to that. And then when I was 17 years old, I was looking for her birth certificate so that I could get into the clubs. And I found a book of sympathy cards. And in that time, my world imploded and I tried to commit suicide 3 times in a short period of time. That's what happens when we don't process our emotion. It doesn't go away. It goes into our body and will actually affect our physical health. It shows up in our triggered behaviors. If anyone has ever had sort of uncontrollable emotional response to something, and we're like, well, that doesn't make sense. It's because it's a triggered response. So I would say, do whatever you need to do to get the help you need, see a counselor, talk with friends. There's all kinds of different spiritual kind of resources that you can use to help process emotion, but do not push it down. Avoidance is the worst thing that you can do. So take care of yourself, Yeah.
And people don't realize how, like you said, things manifest. It's ironic how your subconscious mind, it just thinks of stuff, whether they always taught us in school, your brain, it's like a file cabinet. Things just get tucked away, maybe in the bottom, maybe whatever, they'll come out. Yep. So for one point I was suffering crazy insomnia and the doctors, no one ever checked to see what was wrong. It was just throw some pills at her. They weren't working. Anyway, long story short, I wound up going to a hypnotist. And in 3 sessions, she had me better. It basically was me being a single mom, working so many hours, running my kids. They were practically grew up in the office. And I had this deep guilt that I was a bad mother. I didn't do what was best for them and blah, blah, blah. My kids are grown. I'm a grandparent now. But that was what was keeping me up at night, apparently. Not something I think about, or I woke up and said, oh, I remember. This is what was going through my head while I was, trying to sleep without me even realizing it. So I agree. You have to solve your issues. It's going to affect you one way or another.
Yeah. And I have a whole chapter. One chapter of my book is telling my story. And then the next chapter is the impacts of my story. So I talk about, for example, one of them is I'm a complete control freak, or what I like to call now a reforming control freak. But when I was a 4-year-old child, I couldn't control anything that was happening around me. I couldn't. And then I couldn't, take my parents' grief away. So I was not able to control that situation. So from that day forward, I tried to control the hell out of everything because I never wanted to feel like that again. And each of us has our own unique story or journey. And, maybe you didn't lose your sibling in your formative years, but you might be a control freak too. So there's probably something different that happened to you that is making that happen, making you feel so afraid that at any point in time, the rug is going to be pulled from under you and you're not going to feel safe. So, that's something I always have to be conscious of. And I recently went through another learning about myself when my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. And I flew here and controlled at, all the healthcare providers because there's again the fear I'm in a position where I'm not going to be able to control the outcome. And so I cling on to and control whatever I can. And it doesn't come across well at all. And so understanding, letting that go makes me a much nicer human being.
Yeah, it's hard because,
Yeah.
No,
and much more influential as a result. People like to work with kind people, not bitchy freaks.
Yeah. But it is hard because, the older we get, we're realizing there's so much that's out of our control. And as much as we want to be able whether it's the job market, healthcare, whatever the case may be, life happens. And we have to just figure out how to, navigate it and not let it control us, I guess,
Right. Yeah. And focus on what is in our circle of influence. What can we do that is positive to, and draw our attention to that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, your coaching, it's rooted in empathy and intuition. So how do these qualities enhance your approach to leadership developments?
Well, it's really interesting. Just last week, one of my CEOs said to me, I needed you back then. And he was talking about his near miss with professional sports, being a professional soccer player. And it was because we were working through a similar situation where he was triggered in a boardroom at an important meeting, just like how he would have been triggered on the soccer field, because it went beyond the mind or the strategy. It was, he felt emotional. And so he didn't show up how he wished he could. So we walked through that. And then, he's like, oh, if I knew you then, I could have been a professional sports player. So yeah, so that's how it helps me. It helps me go with my clients. I go beyond just the physical and the mental, and talk more about what is really behind that. What's happening in your emotional, spiritual world that's making you show up that way or making you feel that way. A lot of people will feel afraid, or they'll feel, they'll have imposter syndrome, or, let's get to the bottom of that root problem so we can, pluck that root. Mm-hmm. You have the awareness and you move forward. Mm-hmm. So my clients will say that I'm tough, but I'm also very nurturing. So I'm a bit of both. Mm-hmm. But I'll be quite direct so that they can see. And when you work with senior leaders, I think they appreciate the direct as well.
Yeah. I mean, some people need that. Like I remember years ago, decades ago, actually going through like therapy, and you have to find the one that's best for you. And yes. I remember going to places that I would just talk and talk and talk, and they just sat there and listened.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I could have kind of did that at home in front of the mirror and it would have saved me some money. But I needed that, like for me personally, I needed that person who was like really strict. They would be like, okay, so why did you do that? And I'm like, okay, well, I did this. And I start to move on and I'm like, whoa. Why did you? No. And I'm like, no, but I did. But and they're like, no. So they were like calling me out on stuff. And now it's to the point, almost like your parents. They were kind of like, I don't want to get in trouble again. But I needed that, So some people need that, where they're compassionate, they want to help, but you also need somebody to be firm and be, honest and say, okay, what you're doing is not 100% what you should be doing, So I could see how like upper level senior executives could, really benefit from that.
Well, and that's why having an external coach they rely on an external coach. People within an organization, rely on them to pay their paychecks. So they have to be within the lines and polite and kind and not call them out. That's not really their role. But everybody needs someone like that in their life. So, yeah.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Now, you say success is everyone's birthright. So what practical steps can people take to claim the success that they truly desire?
It all comes down to that creating consciousness, growing your consciousness, your self-awareness. And, I believe my book is a great place to start with that. It's an easy walk you through some steps. One of the first things is creating space and letting go. One of the hardest things human beings ever have to do in our lives. And I've been told that my zodiac sign of Cancer is the worst for letting go. So I'm an expert in struggling to let go myself. But if we don't let go, we have no space for new things to come in. So what I'm telling everybody in this first few months of the new year is clean your closet. If you haven't worn something for the last 2 years, it's time for it to go. If you get back into the skinny jeans, you deserve a new pair. Buy yourself a new pair at the time. But that's how we can let go in the physical.
Right.
And so in my book, I walk through how can we let go in the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual realms and give examples. So that's, the first part is creating space. And then we intentionally create our vision. And then I walk through steps to become more grounded, to become more confident, to bring your power back within yourself, to create balance and claim this birthright.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, what's next for you in Glow Leadership? Are there any new projects, books, or initiatives you're excited about?
I think there's another book, but I'm not sure what it's about yet. So that's a ways away. I'm hoping to do more speaking in the next 2 years. I'd love to, travel to some places and meet people face to face and speak at their events. And then continue to work with my clients. I do some different things with different clients. So continuing to do that.
Nice. Now, anything else you want to talk about that we didn't already cover?
Not that I can think of. No.
Now, how can people learn more about you, get a hold of your book and all that good stuff?
Yeah. So my website is a great place. First of all, www.glowleadership.com. And that outlines my leadership development training programs and coaching and whatnot. My book is available at Amazon, and it is called, I'm on blur, Elevate Potential, A Conscious Approach to Success. So that's available on Amazon, and it's a great way to start. And I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Glow Leadership. Those are great ways to connect with me.
Nice. Well, thank you again for being on the show. Again, that was Diane Taylor. So thanks for listening to Real Conversations with Patricia. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the channel. So thank you again.
Thank you, Patricia. It was lovely.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Real Conversations with Patricia, talking with some of the most brilliant minds on their journey to success and their recommended strategies. Please leave your feedback and visit pristineadvisors.com to get the latest and greatest business advisement on the planet. Feel free to let me know your thoughts, suggestions, and anything else you'd like me to cover. Together, we can make success happen for all.